Butterflies drink blood. They pierce skin. They suck on corpses. And you tattooed one on your skin. Lepidopterophobia. Fear of butterflies. Society treats it as a joke. And in December 2024, killing a monarch became a proposed federal crime. So answer this. Why do we protect an animal that practices vampirism, necrophagy, and something we'd call sexual assault if it were a mammal? Hank Green said something profound. Butterflies don't exist to please you. The blue wing of the morpher has no blue pigment. They're nanostructures that bend light. Optical engineering, not art. 3 reasons for these colors. Toxic signaling to predators. Sexual selection among themselves. Heat absorption in cold climates. None of these reasons are for you. But your brain projects beauty onto them because it evolved to associate vibrant colors with health. We created cartoon characters. Tattooed them on skin, decided they're morally good, and when someone feels repulsed, we treat it as a defect. But what if it's not a defect? Researchers in evolutionary psychology have a theory. Lepidopterophobia might be detection of ancestral patterns. Butterflies have 6-jointed legs, segmented antennae like cockroaches, compound eyes with thousands of lenses, chitinous exoskeleton, unpredictable flight. From a neurological standpoint, butterflies activate the same brain circuits as spiders and cockroaches. The difference? Colors. Remove the colors, and what remains is morphologically identical to other insects that cause universal aversion. Eye tracking studies show that people with lepidopterophobia involuntarily focus on the legs, antennae, and proboscis. Their brains detect insect first, butterfly second. And insects trigger an ancestral aversion response because historically they were disease vectors or venomous threats. But butterflies don't sting, don't bite, don't transmit diseases. True, but what if your brain is detecting something your conscious mind doesn't process? What if lepidopterophobia is your limbic system saying this pattern is wrong? Now it gets disturbing. I'm going to describe an animal's feeding behavior. Try to guess. This animal has an elongated, hollow mouth appendage that it inserts into open wounds. It doesn't chew, it sucks. If it doesn't find wounds, it creates its own by piercing skin. It prefers bodily fluids from decomposing animals, but when necessary, attacks living animals. It also consumes feces, urine, and tears. Your brain imagined leech, tick, mosquito. Parasites, surprise, I described butterflies. The behavior scientists call mud puddling is functionally opportunistic necrophagy. Butterflies land on corpses, carnivore feces, urine, open wounds, human sweat. Why? Minerals, sodium, potassium, and amino acids that nectar doesn't provide. Research from 2019 showed that male butterflies that consume more sodium produce larger spermatophores, nutrient packages transferred to females during mating. The more sodium, the greater reproductive success. Disturbing detail: butterflies prefer urine from carnivores like pumas over herbivores like deer. Why? Carnivores concentrate more minerals because they consume animal tissues rich in proteins. Butterflies chemically track predators to suck their waste. But wait, it gets worse. In 2006, Russian researchers documented moths piercing human skin. The process took up to 50 minutes. The proboscis, equipped with rigid, tooth-like structures, pierced the epidermis in rotating movements while ingesting blood. Only males do this. The hypothesis: blood provides sodium and iron that accelerates spermatophore production. In Asia, the species Hemiceratoids developed a proboscis with retractable barbs. It visits birds while they sleep, anchors between their eyelids, and drinks tears without waking them. Latrophagy, feeding on tears. Metalmark butterflies in Ecuador attack caimans while they rest on riverbanks. Why does this matter for lepidopterophobia? Because your ancestral brain is calibrated to detect patterns of parasitic behavior. Organisms that feed on bodily fluids are statistically disease vectors. Mosquitoes transmit malaria and Zika. Ticks transmit Lyme disease. Your nervous system doesn't wait to confirm, it reacts. Butterflies don't transmit known diseases, but morphologically and behaviorally they activate the same circuits. Lepidopterophobia might be an evolutionary false positive. your brain detecting patterns of ancestral threat in a modern, harmless organism. Now, the turn. All these behaviors are adaptive. They're elegant, they're brilliant evolutionary solutions to metabolic problems. And compared to other organisms, butterflies are relatively harmless. Cotizio wasps inject eggs inside living caterpillars. The larvae eat the caterpillar from the inside out, avoiding vital organs to keep it alive as long as possible. Butterflies don't do this. Female praying mantises decapitate and devour males during mating. The removal of the head intensifies copulatory movements because it eliminates neural inhibition. The male dies, fertilizing the female who is actively eating his thorax. Butterflies don't do this. The fungus Ophiocordyceps infects ants, invades their brain, and controls behavior. The ant climbs vegetation, bites a leaf, and dies. The fungus erupts from its head. Butterflies don't do this. Context matters. When you compare butterflies to real biodiversity, they're relative angels. The problem isn't that butterflies are monstrous, it's that our culture lied about what they are. And this lie has catastrophic consequences. Here's the real problem. We romanticize butterflies to the point of becoming blind to their real needs. Millions plant gardens with non-native ornamental flowers. These flowers provide nectar but not the host plants necessary for egg laying. Monarchs deposit eggs exclusively on milkweed. Without milkweed, there's no reproduction. Result: adults visit your garden, drink nectar, and die without offspring. You've created an ecological trap. Habitat that looks adequate but doesn't sustain population. Herbicides like neonicotinoids were approved because they don't significantly affect mammals. But they persist in pollen and nectar at concentrations that impair navigation, reduce fertility, and increase vulnerability to parasites. The monarch population began collapsing in the 1990s, exactly when neonicotinoids were introduced on a large scale. Climate change is desynchronizing flowering and butterfly emergence. Monarchs emerge genetically programmed to fly south in autumn. But if heat waves delay flowering of plants they need for migratory fuel, they arrive in Mexico, debilitated, and die before reproducing. We caused all of this. And while it was happening, we continued illustrating butterflies on cards, using them as metaphors for rebirth, tattooing their dead forms on our skin. Wings spread flat is the position they only assume when pinned by collectors. The apology you owe to people who fear butterflies isn't sorry, they're not scary. It's sorry I participated in a culture that lied about what they are, and that lie made it harder to protect them. So, what do? First, we validate lepidopterophobia as a plausible evolutionary response. It's not irrational to fear organisms whose behaviors activate ancestral parasite detection circuits. It's a false positive, yes, but false positives exist because erring on the side of caution had survival advantage. Second, we stop demanding that butterflies be symbols of purity to deserve protection. They can suck on corpses and practice behaviors that disturb us and still deserve conservation. Not because they're beautiful, but because they're critical components of collapsing ecosystems. Butterflies pollinate plants that other insects ignore. They serve as food for birds during migrations. They function as indicators of environmental health because they react quickly to changes in temperature and air quality. When monarchs disappear, it's not just a pretty butterfly we lose. It's a pollinator. It's food for dozens of bird species. It's an ecological thermometer telling us something catastrophic is happening. The eastern population increased 99% in 2024, but is still 80% below historical levels. Mathematical models estimate extinction probability between 48 and 69% in the next 60 years for the eastern population and 98 to 99% for the western. We're witnessing extinction in slow motion. And the response can't just be planting pretty flowers and posting on Instagram. It needs to be systemic. Ban neonicotinoids in critical areas. Create habitat corridors connecting fragmented populations. Educate about the difference between ornamental gardens and functional habitats. And most importantly, accept that conservation doesn't require that we love the animals we save. It requires that we understand their ecological role and act accordingly. If you got this far and still feel discomfort near butterflies, I didn't fail. The goal was never to make you love them. It was to contextualize why someone might fear them and why that's not as irrational as we've been told. Your brain detects patterns, parasitic behaviors, arthropod morphology, erratic movements. These are legitimate evolutionary triggers, even when the organism doesn't represent a real threat. The apology isn't to make people with lepidopterophobia feel better. It's to acknowledge that we ridiculed a plausible biological response because we decided butterflies should be symbols of hope. And in that process, we failed people and butterflies. We failed people by invalidating fears. We failed butterflies by loving them for the wrong reason, for aesthetics instead of ecology. The truth is that butterflies don't need to be beautiful to deserve to exist. They don't need to be symbols to have value. They're complex organisms executing survival strategies shaped by millions of years. If those strategies disturb us, the problem isn't in the butterflies. It's in our expectation that nature should behave according to our moral sensibilities. Butterflies suck on corpses because they need sodium. They practice forced copulation because reproductive windows are narrow and competition is fierce. None of these facts make them monsters. They make them survivors. And now that 96% have disappeared in 1 year, maybe it's time to stop debating whether it's rational to fear them and start acting like we fear losing them. Because that's the only fear that should keep us awake at night. If you want to help, plant native milkweed from your region. Avoid systemic pesticides. Support habitat conservation legislation. Share information, including the parts that disturb, because incomplete truth doesn't save species. And next time someone says they're afraid of butterflies, don't laugh. Ask what they saw that you haven't noticed yet. Subscribe to Vittoria Extinta, because there's much more beneath the surface than we imagine.